The mentor and the funeral. Back in my first year, I saw a funeral procession. Several people in mourning attire were carrying someone's coffin. Behind them, a group of what looked like relatives wept openly. Everyone had a somber expression on their faces. The hearse carrying the coffin came to a stop. I quietly hid my thumbs, feeling a sense of respect. Among those in the procession, a little boy caught my eye. He was around 5 years old, and I had seen him before. I couldn't help but wonder if his father had passed away. The mourning attire looked quite uncomfortable under the bright sun. "Oh, really? Where was it?" Senior asked while twirling his pen. It was hard to tell if he was genuinely interested or simply indifferent. He had been failing at his pen twirling attempts, dropping it multiple times since he started. "It was over there, by the pedestrian overpass, across from the barber shop," I replied. I told him about the funeral procession I had seen during my way home yesterday. The school library was just as quiet as usual, and the student librarian, the one always wearing glasses, was busy organizing the lending cards. "I see," Senior responded nonchalantly. He continued with his pen twirling, which hadn't succeeded even once. It seemed like he was practicing a challenging trick, and it kept falling. I wondered why he kept trying when he couldn't do it. As I pondered this, Senior suddenly stopped his movements. "I've got a story like this," Senior said, setting his pen down and looking at me. A funeral procession marches by, with a photograph of the deceased leading the way, and the casket surrounded by mourners. Pairs of men and women witness this procession. The men can't see the photograph clearly, but the women can. While listening, I thought back to the funeral procession I had seen yesterday. The photograph was being held by a weeping woman, but I couldn't make out the person in the picture clearly. The woman says, "The photograph in the procession is mine. This is my own funeral." The next day, the woman dies. Then the man sees the procession again. I couldn't recall the details clearly, but the boy's gaze was vivid in my memory. His eyes, somewhat bored yet expressionless, had stared straight at me. At the head of that procession was the dead woman. She was holding the photograph with a clear image of the man. After sharing this story, Senior picked up his pen and resumed practicing his pen spinning. I tried hard to remember the photograph from yesterday but couldn't. I had only seen it in passing, and the details eluded me. When I couldn't recollect it, Senior chuckled softly. "It's from a manga. What you saw was a real funeral, so there's nothing strange about it." "Nothing at all." I breathed a sigh of relief. This guy could make even ordinary ghost stories sound terrifying. The fear depended on the person telling the tale. Even mundane ghost stories could seem frightening when related by the right person. I was really trying to remember. I did see the photograph, but I didn't get a good look at it. "Please don't spook me like that." Senior's chuckling stopped, and his lips curled into a sly smile. His narrowed eyes revealed deeper hues. I had a bad feeling. This was not a good look. "Well, if you couldn't see it, then there's nothing you can do about it. But, just in case, did anything specific stick out in your memory while I was talking about it?" I was describing a lot of vague details during the story, but was there any part that you could describe clearly? The boy's eyes filled my mind clearly, as if to bury themselves deep in my memory. Maybe it's just that it left an impression. I really watched that boy for a long time. Senior continued spinning the pen. The pen completed a complex, intricate pattern between his fingers and returned to his palm. It seemed he had been practicing a rather advanced technique. "That's not it. You saw the funeral during yesterday's ride home. So, what did you say?" "It looked hot. Bathed in the sun. But yesterday, it was cloudy, wasn't it?" Without retracing my memory, I distinctly remembered the heavy gray sky, so I knew it had been overcast. But I certainly recalled what I saw. The mourners at the funeral were all dressed in black, and their attire did appear sweltering in the sun. The most recent funeral at that location was this summer. It definitely happened, there was a funeral. It's just that when did you see it while riding your bike? I was in shock, and I couldn't summon the strength to speak. When and where had I seen a funeral? Where had I ridden my bike? "Oh, and also," Senior said, as if suddenly recalling something. I had no strength left to ask what he meant. "The deceased wasn't your father. That summer's funeral, they were bidding farewell to the eldest son of that family. It seems you didn't know that." I recalled that there had been an exceptionally late-born child, likely around 5 years old, who I'd seen playing on the road in front of the house a while back. It seemed like an indistinct memory, but it matched perfectly with the boy I saw yesterday. "Well, I've had quite an unusual experience. Staring at the dead and transcending time." "What a feat you pulled off," Senior said, laughing. His laughter drew a reprimand from the library committee member, calling for quiet. "How was it?" "You're right, many of you have probably had experiences that may seem strange, but I just can't remember. Take your time to think about it, and if you ever recall those experiences, please do share them in the comments. On this channel, I narrate Japanese ghost stories. If you have any other stories you would like me to introduce or any questions about the stories, please leave a comment. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode.